Good evening to everybody that might be watching this later on. I want to say a few words about Charlie Kirk. On the 10th day of September, I decided to make a video asking some questions about 9/11. What spurred me to do that was obviously the following day was the anniversary, but more than that, I had seen where Tucker Carlson was about to release an expose of what he believed was 9/11, and he was going to do that in maybe 3 or 4 segments. So I made my video, and in preparation for him releasing his the following day. I hadn't it well made till the news came across the screen that Charlie Kirk had been killed out there in Utah. So obviously I was going to not produce my little video, and Tucker Carlson likewise decided obviously not to produce his major video the following day, so it was put on hold. But I now see a few questions about the Charlie Kirk situation as well. In all these situations that I have followed, I always notice that there's one, two, sometimes many things that, if not outright impossible, most certainly would have to be deemed to be highly improbable events happening. And I will start off, with the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy was assassinated by supposedly a fellow firing from the upstairs window of the book depository building down there in Dallas, Texas, November the 22nd, 1960. I was down there less than a year ago. I viewed the situation very well. That visit reaffirmed my belief that the shot that killed Kennedy came from behind the fencing, up behind the grassy knoll, looking down, with the target approaching the shooter rather than going away from the shooter, making it a much more easily taken shot. Now, when they did the Warren Commission, that's a long story, of course. But the most striking aspect of the Warren Commission was, and there was a lot of aspects to it, but I don't have time to go into them all. The most important aspect of that shooting was that Kennedy was shot at with 3 rounds, 2 of which hit, 1 of which totally missed. But unfortunately for the people that was writing the Warren Commission, the necessity seemed to be that 4 rounds were needed to have sustained the wounds in everybody. So they had to compromise and improvise. And they will tell us that a bullet fired from a short range with a rifle will be known to zigzag, basically all over the place, and change direction in a sense, and shatter many bones in 2 different individuals, and yet be found intact, lying on the seat of the limousine. That, of course, is an impossibility. We were told it, and that was it, and that was the end of Kennedy. Now, fast forward to the video I did on 9/11. I too presented many questions that were very difficult, some in actual fact impossible to answer. One of them, of course, was about the passport. The passport was found in all that rubble. That was basically impossible. The other things were impossible too, but they were technically explained away. But I'm just taking the example of the passport because it's a very simple thing that anybody can understand. The passport was found intact despite all the confusion and all the rubble, and hundreds of tons of material and dust and this and that. That was that. On to Charlie. Charlie Kirk, we are told, was shot from 200 yards using a bolt-action Mauser rifle. That would not have been a difficult shot at all with a scope. In actual fact, I could have made it myself without a scope, because anybody that has shot a rifle a few times anyway, I would have shot a rifle more than a few times. But anyway, anybody that would shot a rifle 200 yards, even using plain iron sights, it's not a particularly hard shot. With a scope, it's a lot easier. So the people who say this fellow was supposed to be an expert in marksman or whatnot, that is not true in my estimation. A young man with perfect eyesight, strong looking fellow that can hold a rifle steady with the scope can do that. But what he cannot do is what we are told he did after he did the shooting. We are told that he disassembled that rifle and put it into his backpack and ran across the roof of the building. There's video actually showing this within seconds of actually the shot taking place. And that is just impossible. We see him jumping down and he stumbles, he hurts his leg, and then he scampers across the lawn and he escapes with the rifle disassembled in his backpack. If it wasn't disassembled in his backpack, well, it would still be on the roof. Of course, it wasn't on the roof. And that was that. We were later asked then to believe that he went into a nearby wood or whatever. Now, one would imagine that his focus would be on making a clean getaway with his knapsack in the confusion and that crucial few minutes. Because remember, the security for this fellow was not very at a high level at all. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been shot to begin with. So, you would imagine in the confusion, a youngster, college age, with a backpack, everybody running left, right, and center, would easily escape detection. So then you have to ask yourself, why would he have stopped in a wood, take the time to reassemble the rifle such that the rifle is found? And also, why would he have sent text messages to his partner, or whatever you want to call him, to come to get the rifle later? Well, it's more difficult to retrieve the rifle later than it is earlier, because by later, there will be FBI people from all over the universe, around the place. So, that is one thing that is very hard to believe. Anyway, there's an even worse situation which is impossible to believe. The wound that killed, supposedly, Charlie Kirk went into his neck. We saw the blood coming out, gushing out. I'm not sure if your jugular was severed that it would release that amount of blood, because the blood was coming out horizontally at great force. Coming out horizontally at great force instead of coming out vertically at great force would suggest to me, at least, that it was pushed out by the momentum of the round of the bullet coming out of his neck. To me, that looks like an exit wound. I'm no expert on exit wounds. I'm no expert on entry wounds either, but I am an expert on common sense. If that's any use to anybody. Now, if that wound was an exit wound, the obvious question is, where is the entry wound? We are looking at the situation from the front by the video, so the entry wound can only be to the rear of his head if the other wound is an exit wound. If that is the case, the trajectory of the shot can be easily determined. It would have come from the rear. So now people believe he was shot from the rear. If that's an exit wound, most certainly. There's no other explanation for it. So therefore, the story now has changed. That all of a sudden is an entry wound. The problem with that being an entry wound is, again, where is the exit wound? Now we are told one heck of a whopper in my belief system. We are told that there is no exit wound. That high velocity, I believe that's the one at 2200 feet per second, or maybe it's 3000 feet per second. Just make any difference. It goes at a very high velocity. It's a heavy round. It has a lot of kinetic energy, and there's no way on Earth that a human neck could stop that bullet. Anybody that has fired 45 caliber handgun, you can actually see that it can go through. It can go through steel, well, quarter-inch steel anyway. It has a whack of a punch. It's just unbelievable. There's absolutely no way that that round could have been stopped by this fellow's. Now, the doctor, the surgeon, whatever, he comes out and says this, that, and the other. People will say whatever they're told to say if they know what's good for them, if there is the alternative of a nasty nature. He says his neck stopped the bullet. Well, the neck stopped the bullet. Where is the bullet? It would be inside his neck. Has the bullet been taken out of his neck? I don't think so. But it's not in his neck because it's impossible to be in his neck. That is just totally and utter ridiculous altogether. So that leaves us with an impossible situation that we are asked to believe. Now, What happened after Charlie was killed? What happened before he was killed is even more important. It is said that he had changed his worldview about this, that, and the other, and people that he favored up to this point. He would have had a little bit of an epiphany and might decide that no, he had made a mistake and an error in his belief system. If that was the case, some people would have a great desire for this system not to change at all and basically to keep him quiet. I'm not saying they are, I'm not saying they did, I'm just saying that they most certainly would have a reason to. After Charlie Kirk was killed, Charlie Kirk was well known in the United States, but he wasn't well known by everybody. He was only well known by the young people. Older people were basically unaware of this fellow because he was just broadcasting and on the radar scopes of young people. When he was killed, the entire media focus for a full week was on Charlie, culminating in a funeral that saw over 100,000 people in the stadium praying, and it was like the Super Bowl. It was a grand event. Why did that happen? Then, of course, after that happened, he became a global celebrity. You have people in Ireland saying, "Oh, poor Charlie Kirk." It is my belief that not one person out of 1,000 in Ireland ever heard of Charlie Kirk before he was killed. And now the complete, everything has changed. And we are to see new laws being introduced. We are seeing people being cancelled. We are seeing people being thrown out of their jobs. But that's just the start of it. We're going to see people losing their passports. We're going to see a situation akin to what happened after 9/11. What happened after 9/11 was the Patriot Act was introduced and American civil liberties were greatly curtailed. And now you're going to see the next phase in that civil liberties are going to be curtailed. So that's just some few things to dwell upon with regards to the assassination of Charlie. Thank you for watching.